Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the recording has been started, right? Okay, cool. So let's welcome Professor Jenssen. You ready to, you can share your screen. And you may start your presentation, please.
Okay.
Yeah, we see the screen, and if you had connection issues, just turn off your camera so we can hear you and be able to follow your presentation, just in case. So just to remind, it's a 15 minute presentation. So
Right. Okay. You're on.
Okay. Kalimera, and thank you for this opportunity to present our study with the title, How Do We Assess Teacher Students in Norwegian Language and Texts and Physical Education? An analysis inspired by Lee Schulman. We are Annepetra, Røkke, Jenssen, and Gunn Svartaas, representing the teacher education at the Norwegian University of Science and Technology. The measurements in PISA 2000 show that Norwegian 15-year-olds performed at an average competence level in reading, science, and mathematics. The results were perceived as weak here in Norway and are referred to as the PISA shock. These results and the evaluation of the national curriculum for primary and secondary school from 2003 resulted in several reforms in the educational system after 2000 here in Norway. In 2006 came a national curriculum for primary and secondary school. We were given a new curriculum with basic skills for all subjects, competence goals, and more teacher resources. Norway has a national curriculum for both primary, secondary school, high school, and teacher education. The national guidelines present the purposes, relevant principles, and learning outcomes for all subjects based on the European qualification framework. Several measures were also implemented after 2000 to meet the PISA challenge and increase the learning outcomes for all pupils. For example, national tests in reading, mathematics, and English, mapping tests in reading, and selection tests in writing. As teachers are recognized as important for students' learning and often get the blame for poor results, the teacher education received a new national curriculum both in 2010 and 2016. In 2010, the education was divided into grade 1 to 7 and grade 5 to 10. There are different national guidelines for 1 to 7 and 5 to 10. In 2016, the education became a master's degree study. In the Norwegian teacher education, the subjects are profession-oriented and didactic is integrated in all subjects. Our research question is, how do we assess teacher students in Norwegian language and text and physical education, differences and similarities? To analyze the assessments, we have looked at how the assessments were designed, how the challenges are established, what parts of the curriculum they tested, and how didactics were integrated in the compulsory work and exams. In this study, we have explored assessment in the newly started master's degree in teacher education for grade 1 to 7. We have looked at compulsory coursework and final exams for students in Norwegian language and text, NO, and physical education, PE. The assessments investigated were applied in the period 2017 to 2019 in courses of 30 credits during the student's first and second year in the teacher education. To analyze the assessments, we have used Schulman and Bloom. We have looked for subject content knowledge, pedagogical content knowledge, and curricular knowledge based on Schulman's work from 1986 and his research on what knowledge is necessary for a good teacher. We have also looked at the assessment in the relation to Bloom's taxonomy in the cognitive domain using the revision made by Anderson and Cratwell in 2001.
We have tried to put the Schulman put his categories into a table. You can see the different colors. We have subject content knowledge, we have pedagogical content knowledge, and curricular content knowledge. All these categories are also put into propositional knowledge and case knowledge and strategic knowledge. Talking about knowledge in this perspective, we are actually talking about competence. But as Schulman used knowledge, we are putting it in knowledge boxes. These categories, like the subject and pedagogical and curricular knowledge categories, are strongly connected to the subjects taught. And in Schulman's and our view as well, impossible to separate. If we look into propositional knowledge, it's the academic knowledge, and the case knowledge would be well known to you, and the strategic knowledge would be being able to take good choices in the moment of teaching. Yeah, well, we can see the different colors, and the subject content knowledge is, we can come back to that. I will go to the Bloom's taxonomy, and that is, I guess, more familiar to you. And we used the revision made by Anderson and Cratwell in 2001. That means to create is at the top. And I guess it's very familiar to you. Looking at the results we found, talking about Bloom, we in the compulsory work in Norwegian and PE, we have a wide range, wider range than in NO. That means we have more compulsory work as well. In the exams, both NO and PE at the higher levels of the taxonomy, like in create, evaluate, and analyze. Looking into the Schulman's categories, we have all the main categories in the compulsory work, while the subcategories, NO test propositional knowledge and case knowledge, while PE also test strategic knowledge. They are actually teaching. The final exams, we also test all three categories. PE has substantial parts of pedagogical content knowledge, while NO emphasize the subject content knowledge. The differences between the two subjects will, when it comes to where the weight is placed between the three categories, would be explained by the uniqueness of the subjects, and PE being a practical subject, while NO is a more theoretical subject. To the curricular knowledge, it's not explicit asked for in neither exams, but it's implicitly required.
Just a small reminder, you have 5 minutes left, please. So can you please wrap up?
The assessment of the students do not include the ability to teach, while the students in PE are asked to perform as teachers and discuss and reflect upon their performance. On the other hand, it's possible in NO to plan, analyze, and assess pupils' learning and their competence without pupils being present. For instance, using text produced by pupils. The analysis show that the compulsory work and exam have a wide range of assessment tools, as Gittermer and Gisk argues you need. And while PE have the broadest fan, and we can explain that by the nature of the subjects. Here we can see the full range of the exams and compulsory work. And as we see that the NO has larger more weight on the subject content knowledge and the propositional, like the academic part of the subject. And while PE would go further down and work about the strategic knowledge, what to do when students do this and this. And but we all talk about teacher competence in the exams. You can see that these parts are less used in the NO and more used in the NO will be the principles and maxims and norms.
Sorry, Professor Jenssen, you have 2 minutes left. Thank you.
The differences between the subjects are visible in the assessments, and we might ask whether PE has enough weight on subject content knowledge to be sure that these students have deep enough subject content knowledge to become good teachers, and whether NO students are tested enough in teaching skills.
to doing this analyzing, we have gotten new insight in our own subject and other subjects' values as well, what they value, and the opportunity to see other ways of assessing students as well. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Professor Jenssen, for your wonderful presentation. Any questions you may leave in the chat box that for the end we will talk about for the interaction session later at the end. Next, can we welcome Professor Marcus? You may start sharing your screen whenever you're ready for presentation. Thank you. And again, you have 15 minutes. Please be mindful for your time. Thank you.
Okay, hello, I hope you can hear me. Yes, perfect. Okay, hello everyone. This is a funny way to give a presentation, obviously. Well, I'm happy we're all here or there or wherever you are. Now, I'm actually logging in from Berlin from my hotel room since I had the sudden travel, but I'm a philosopher of education, and I got into this conference since equality was very much a topic that I worked with. I don't know if you are aware, but many philosophers do not really use PowerPoint presentations. We just read our papers and hope that you can follow the train of thought. So I would basically read out a paper that I wrote here, and yes, it's about equality in education, and I'm taking you on a philosophical journey. So you just, hang in there, try to follow, and I hope you enjoy the ride. So yeah, I will start. As we hear nowadays so much about the ongoing discrimination, whether based on sexual or racial stereotypes, I have decided to devote this paper to show how education as formation, or Bildung, the German word Bildung, can and should constantly serve us as a reminder that all human beings, even in all our differences, are equal. While I truly believe that there should be no need to have to present an argument for this, I will do so based on my understanding of Bildung in accordance with Heidegger and Buber, as well as Jewish thought. Along the way of my argumentation, we shall come to see the importance of the complexity of the word Bildung and gain a deeper understanding of its meaning. In order to make it easier to understand, let me explain upfront the connection between education as formation, or Bildung, and Jewish thought. It lies in the similarity of the complexities of the words used. The ambiguity of the German word Bildung, which allows for interesting speculations and reflections, has a parallel in the complexity of the word used in the biblical account of the formation of the human being in the image of God. And to top it, while in the English version, God formed Adam in his own image, the Hebrew word used is tselem, and it's usually rendered into build or Ebenbild in German translations. So this paper will show how the similarities and complexity in the usage of these words, overarching languages and traditions, can teach a lesson that so many, unfortunately, seem in need to be reminded of. Lucky enough, I am not the first to see and point out a connection between the term Bildung as used in educational context and the biblical passage in the book of Genesis. Meyer Drave writes that Bildung points to build, that is image, and thereby back to the passage in Genesis where God creates human in his image, build. However, before jumping all the way back to the biblical text, let us first look at what some modern thinkers have written about Bildung. Biesta writes that Bildung is a process in which one engages with culture and with existing meaning in order to become oneself. For him, it is the formation of oneself or of one's identity through engagement with culture. Biesta points out that the term Bildung thereby goes back to the Greek idea of paideia. Heidegger too, in his Platon's Lehre von der Wahrheit, highlights the similarity between Paideia and Bildung. While explaining the wisdom behind Plato's cave analogy, he interprets Paideia as die und Eingewöhnung des Menschenwesens in dem ihm jeweils zugewiesenen Bereich, which means so much as the acclimatization of the humankind towards and into the area towards which it is being directed. This process is led by one's soul, which as whole diverts its aim foundationally back to its own roots. What exactly the aims of our soul are is ambiguous, yet the idea that the being allows for us to connect to our souls seems interesting to say the least. Furthermore, Heidegger points out that this is a slow process, as this Umwendung, turning around or change, occurs in the essence of one's being. Yet more important, Heidegger points out that in order for such a change to turn or to occur, there needs to be a new direction. And this new direction in return is towards the Vorbild, which means both role model and pre-reset image. That is the being we strive to become or turn into. And Heidegger ends this section by repeating that there is no exact word in German for Paideia, but Bildung comes closest to it. Heidegger is quick to point out that the word Bildung too is not a simple but complex word, as there are two meanings to it. One connected to knowledge and coming to know something, whereas the other is related to the creation of something. His main point in relation to the double meaning of Bildung is that the acquiring of knowledge demands for and thereby simultaneously creates a Vorbild, an ideal archetype that one strives to become. Sich nach dem Vorbild bilden, to fashion oneself according to this preset image. Heidegger concludes that it is the encounter with the idea of ideas, or the highest idea, which outside Plato's cave is represented by the sun, that allows for the Bildung of such a Vorbild to come into being. That is, for the formation of such an archetype to come into being. Therefore, in order to have a direction in which one aims to form oneself towards, sich bilden, we need a Vorbild, which emerges from our knowledge or experience of the first course. Pointing out that both Plato and Aristotle relate this idea, or erste Ursache, the first cause, to God or the godly, Heidegger called it himself das Seiendste des Seienden, the most being of the being, or being of beings, as Biester translates. We thus come to understand that for Heidegger, it is precisely this first cause that creates the Vorbild, by which and towards one aspires to form oneself. However, the understanding or acquiring of such a Vorbild emerges and forms itself through our encounter with the most being of being, which comes into being through being. Hence, for Heidegger, the meaning of Bildung is rather a passive emerging state of knowledge or knowing that one of knowing than one of actively acquiring knowledge. It is a sort of knowledge or understanding that evolves through or by itself, almost as a supplement to being. In this sense, it is a coming to know something without actively having to acquire additional knowledge. However, the new insight allows for one to come to new understandings, just as happens with the individual in Plato's cave, who is freed from his chains and ventures out to see the sun. In return, this acquired insight, which occurs by itself, by mere exposure to the first course, creates the Vorbild for which we actively aim for when trying to form ourselves into whom we want to be. One may therefore say that die Bildung bildet das Vorbild des Gebildeten und des Bildenden, which means as much as Bildung forms the Vorbild for the educated or formed one and for the learning individual, the one to be formed. This ultimately means that it is an ongoing process in which we constantly acquire another insight and thereby further form ourselves into who we are. The image of our goals or archetype constantly slightly changes as it is influenced by new knowledge and new understanding. This in return makes Bildung an endless and thereby infinite process. The other Martin Buber, wrestles with some very similar questions when he writes in Unser Bildungsstil, Bildung kommt von Bilden und Bilden von Bild. is in need of a build, some sort of an image of what one wants to become like, an archetype or an idea towards which one aims to educate oneself. As he writes, Bilden heißt ein geschautes Bild im irdischen Stoff verwirklichen, so dass es in die Welt der Dinge tritt. Bilden means realizing a seen image into earthly material in order for it to step into the world of things. It is like materializing an idea from the realm of ideas into the material world. And he goes on to write, Menschen bilden heißt ein geschautes Bild im lebenden Person verwirklichen. Educating or forming human means to realize a seen image of man into living people. Bildung as a process of coming into being, that is the formation of oneself, relies on an already existing image of archetype, which is the build and becomes the forebuild or builder. One's own formation is directed by an aspiration of a form that one wants to form oneself into. The big question, of course, still says how and from where we are supposed to get or receive the image that we aspire to become. Or in Heidegger's language, how can we be sure to encounter the being of beings? Within Jewish tradition, the first cause or the being of beings is, of course, God. However, this does not necessarily make it easier to answer the question. Yet the very same words that have been discussed so far might be able to help. As previously mentioned, when looking at the German Bible translations, we find the word build already in the very first chapter. Martin Luther uses build and zum Bilde Gottes when translating B'Tselem Elohim. In English, usually image of God, while Mendelssohn uses Ebenbilde. Both words, of course, derive from build, as does Bildung. Now, apart from the apparent contradiction within the monotheistic traditions that God has neither form nor can she be seen, the idea of translating Tselem into build raises some very interesting and noteworthy questions. For what do we actually mean when we say human was created in the image of God? As briefly mentioned above, according to the monotheistic religions, an image of God cannot exist, since God cannot be seen. What then is the meaning of us being created in his image? For over 2,000 years, Jewish thinkers have grappled with exactly this question, and I therefore want to look at some of the answers that have been suggested. In a well-known passage from the Mishnah Sanhedrin, it reads as follows: as to teach the greatness of the Holy One, blessed is he, a man mints hundreds of coins from the one mold, and they all look alike. But the God, he mints everyone from the mold of the first Adam, and no one resembles like his fellows. Therefore, each and every one is obligated to say, for my sake was the world created. What can be learned from this text is that not only there is a godly imprint within each and every human being, but just as each and every coin has exactly the same value as another, although they might look a little different, so it is with human beings. You cannot know what exactly is meant by the image of God. However, I believe that we can learn that according to the first book of Moses, human beings have certain special characters and capabilities that receive a godly tag. This then, of course, turns humans into something special and unique. Therefore, no matter what color, sex, religion, political opinion, or whatnot, we are all of full equal value by being made in the image of God, no matter how different from each other. Furthermore, the first cause of being or being of being can not only be found in our own existence, but more so in the existence of the other. This way of understanding the matter, of course, aligns with the thinking of Levinas and even Meister Eckhart. There is therefore a lot more that can be written or discussed, from finding the godly spark in us to being able to see it in the other. This, however, is beyond my goal, since all I am asking for is to recognize the other as equal, and for that matter, we could even leave God out of the equation. Yet there are two more points that I want to make. The first one is about the infinite value of each human. One example for the value can also be found in the Jewish text, when Cain murdered his brother Abel. God said to Cain, "Where is your brother Abel?" "I don't know," he replied. "Am I my brother's keeper?" And God said, "What have you done? Your brother's bloods are crying out to me from the ground." One question that comes up when reading these sentences is, why is it written bloods in plural and form and not blood in a singular form? as it would seem grammatically correct. And the common explanation for this curiosity is that the plural is used to state it is not that it is the blood of all his generations that were supposed to come from him, but will now not get the possibility to exist. A similar argument pointing to the potential and value of the individual can be found in Sanhedrin, where the famous sentence appears that has been made famous through the world by Spielberg's movie about Oskar Schindler. It is for this reason that the human was created unique, to teach you that anyone who destroys a single life is considered to have destroyed a whole world. And whoever saves a single life is considered to have saved a whole world. According to this, each one of us is a whole world in itself. Ultimately, this means that nobody is replaceable or that anyone is more valuable than the other. We are all made uniquely, that is in God's image, thereby allowing for the highest of being to dwell within ourselves and adding the aspect of the infinite to us. For becoming or Bildung is a never-ending process. And this brings me to my last point, since we are talking about Bildung, formation, and becoming. We have seen that the big part of it is about who we should aim for to become, that is the Vorbild. And I therefore want to recount the well-known story that Buber quotes. Before his death, Rabbi Zusias said, "In the coming world, God will not ask me, why did you not behave like an angel? Or why not like Moses? He will ask me, why were you not Zusia?" The reason I mention this story is because it comes to show that the greatness of each one of us is precisely in who we are and become. It is about understanding this as well as acknowledging it in the others that surround us. This means it is each and everyone's personal task to become who we want to be, a quest that, although never ending, is an end in itself. What is asked of us individuals is to find this sort of being or godly spark in ourselves in order to see it in every other human too. This is especially important because, as we have seen, the needed Vorbild emerges from an encounter that is not present in our own being. We are in need for other and an encounter with its being for our Bildung to occur. Looking at the other and understanding that not only are we equal, both in being different as well as in infinite value, but that we need each other in order to live up to our potential. Since it is by seeing the being or the godly in the other that we are capable of imagining a form of Vorbild for ourselves. Ultimately, this may explain why Bildung is a rather personal and individual process, directed or triggered by the other. One comes to understand and find one's very own godly imprint, which even though is shared with everyone, stays one's very own personal treasure. It is then by realizing and appreciating the equality, along with the differences and uniquenesses of each and every one, that we are capable of aspiring and creating a Vorbild that we want to form ourselves into. Merci beaucoup.
All right. Okay. Thank you, Professor Marcus. Thank you for your presentation. Then I think we have Professor Maipas. He's not making it today.
Yeah. So Professor Maipas is not making its presentation. Let me just try to optimize my screen share. There we go. So can you see the screen?
Yes.
Good. So he has prepared a presentation, I think, 2 weeks ago, and he asked us it was possible to just pass it on during the session. So the session is actually recorded. So feel free to listen and to make comments in case you do not understand the things. So here we go.
Hi, I am Sotirios Maipas, and today I am going to make a presentation on a theoretical model of 15Cs that may be helpful while dealing with environmental health issues. I am so sorry for not being able to attend the conference live. I have to deal with some expected and some unexpected family obligations, as they have appeared after approximately 2 years, 2 difficult years due to COVID-19 and the relevant health risk and restrictions. Fortunately, old and new technological advances are here to help us. I am extremely grateful to Dr. Margareta Kefalaki for helping me in keeping my promise to make this speech. I like personal interactions, I like receiving feedback while speaking, but during this week this is not feasible. I hope you understand. However, you can send me whatever you want via email or via social media. I am always here for you, except for this week. Let's start by defining environmental health. Environmental health is defined as the branch of public health that is concerned with all the factors of natural and built environment that can potentially impact human health. Indeed, environmental degradation has created an unsustainable status quo that poses several known and unknown threats to environmental health. Humans' relationships with their natural and man-made environments are multidimensional and are governed by socio-economic, cultural, health, ethical, and religious aspects. All stakeholders have to act urgently and cooperate closely to deal with these threats, such as changing weather and landscape patterns, impacts on agriculture and the economy, food and water insecurity issues, increasing healthcare costs, and negative impacts on cultural heritage, such as archaeological sites. To sum up, there are many physical, chemical, biological, social, and psychological factors that determine the general well-being of current and future generations. It becomes obvious that several different professionals are involved in environmental health, including doctors, physicists, social and political scientists, civil engineers, architects, psychologists, zoologists, and food and noise inspectors. One of the most common examples of an environmental health issue is climate change. Climate change affects human health both directly through extreme weather events and indirectly, for example, through airborne and vector-borne diseases. Climate change is considered to be the most significant global health threat of this century. What we have to do? Mitigation and adaptation. Adaptation and mitigation. Adaptation and mitigation are two key strategies for dealing with climate change and its impact. Obviously, we must not forget something that is very important: the factor of uncertainty, the factor of scientific uncertainty, which is another key factor that governs our efforts to address climate change and other environmental health threats. The more we know, the more uncertainty we have. The case of climate change reveals how the uncertainty is governing our efforts, our sciences, and our policies. Here you can see the different climatic scenarios. Nobody knows what the future will bring, but we do know that our decision to reduce greenhouse gas emissions will create a better future. To do this, we need innovation. And nowadays, innovation is everywhere. Here you can see and hear the wind park on the island of St. George, which is very close to Athens. From the time of ancient cisterns and aqueducts and of the first suburban dam constructed outside ancient Athens, up until the potential future use of plastic eating microorganisms, humanity is constantly striving to meet environmental health innovation milestones. Despite the constant innovation in the environmental health sector, innovation differs vastly from one geographical area to another. This difference is especially visible between the developed and developing world. The capacity for innovation differs not only among countries, but also among various institutions, between the public and the private sector, and between firms of different sizes within a certain country. It is obvious that innovation, which is essential for the effective and sustainable management of environmental health issues, can be considered as a function of time, location, and explicit and tacit knowledge acquisition. There are many examples. Now, let's see the 56 pathway. Let's see the steps one by one. Consciousness of the urgency. Second step, comprehension of the complexity. Third step, confidence in our ability to change. We can change. Next step, capacity building for decision making. Next step, cooperation among stakeholders, among government, industry, media, and family. And education. Education is at the crossroads of everything. Education may also be considered as the magic glue that keeps this force together. Carbon footprint reduction. Circular economy adoption. The left column indicates what industry has to do, and the right column indicates what we have to do. Circular economy is a sustainable economic model according to which everything is reused. The old products or the components re-enter the economy, leading to significantly less waste. Corporate sustainability. Creativity, creative thinking and action. Creation of resilient and adaptive communities. Creation of sustainable living environments for all social groups. Creation of new explicit and tacit knowledge. Communication of the new knowledge. Curriculum updates. Education for sustainable development must cover factors associated with environmental health by introducing new courses, constantly updating existing ones, and by organizing relevant lifelong learning programs. The curricula of the many disciplines related to environmental health, such as agriculture, economics, social sciences, psychology, law, and management sciences, must constantly evolve not only to cover the market needs, but also to ensure sustainability. Crisis management. Crises are unavoidable. COVID-19, a very common example. Everything was closed. However, there was room for innovation. This is something that we have proposed recently. Okay, working from home, could this generate something good? Yes, it can. The new hybrid working model is an environmentally friendly alternative, mainly due to lower energy consumption. We may accept and use this new working model because this model generates fewer carbon emissions. Why not? Higher education institutions may be considered as the piece of a puzzle of a multidimensional puzzle that can make the whole system productive and efficient. A joint, innovative, interdisciplinary and interprofessional effort among higher education institutions, authorities, energy providers, the entire private and public sector and local people is urgently required to mitigate and reverse the increasing deterioration of environmental health. Given the nature of environmental problems, humanity must also adopt intergenerational cooperation between current and future generations to ensure sustainability. Research could serve as an innovative driver of sustainability, including the proposal of newer methods and technologies that emit fewer greenhouse gases or reduce packaging waste. Research is also necessary to understand the complexity of environmental health issues, eliminate environmental injustice, produce new knowledge, and reduce scientific uncertainty. Indeed, each educational institution is a complex system which comprises students and teaching staff, buildings and indoor environments, and various services. Therefore, educational institutions have their own carbon footprint and should lead by example by reducing it. Higher education institutions must promote research and prepare students to become responsible citizens and future decision makers. Therefore, it is imperative that they invest in relevant research, disseminate knowledge, establishing lifelong learning networks, and participate in the shaping of proper mitigation strategies against climate change and other environmental health threats. They must become important agents of the change, working towards sustainability. Their proper interaction and cooperation with all stakeholders, such as the government, firms, non-governmental organizations, and local communities, is crucial. Here you can see the 17 goals, Sustainable Development Goals. Education for sustainable development must cover many factors related to these goals. Also, the education for sustainable development must also include indigenous knowledge transmission. This is very important. Let's remember a phrase that Hindu Maru Ibrahim, the president of the Association for Indigenous Women and People of Chad, said recently. My grandmother is the best technology ever. She can predict the weather without a cell phone or internet. The trust and traditional knowledge of local indigenous communities, combined with the scientific and technological advances, could offer solutions and generate innovations capable of speeding up sustainability. This important type of the indigenous knowledge, this important type of knowledge must be recorded, stored in databases, properly incorporated on curricula, and disseminated adequately. Further, formal strategies against environmental degradation should integrate this type of knowledge in favor of sustainability, such as in the case of climate change. Higher education institutions should act as depositaries and guardians of indigenous and traditional knowledge and skills. To sum up, today's economies are unfortunately expanding in an unsustainable manner, increasing the burden on the environment. However, humanity now has the knowledge, the skills, and the technology to turn the current unsustainable status quo into a reality where current and future generations can thrive. Obviously, the traditional missions of teaching and research are not enough for achieving sustainability. Higher educational institutions must adopt a more strategic role that transforms them into socially responsible gates to a sustainable future. Regarding environmental health, a joint, innovative and effective effort among higher educational institutions, authorities, the private and public sector and local people is urgently required to mitigate and reverse the constant deterioration of environmental health. The 56 model obviously is a theoretical model that needs further research and pilot applications. However, higher education institutions, we must say that they can play a crucial role in all the described steps of this pathway. Thank you very much.
So that was the presentation of Dr. Maipas. So no further comment on that. So I'll let Candice sharing the session.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Professor Jenssen and Professor Marcus, for participating in this wonderful session. Any feedback? Any questions?
Well, thank you very much. This is a weird thing, I will say. We're presenting to three people. It's a funny thing that we're doing here, but thank you very much for organizing and everybody for participating.
Yeah. It's been a weird year because there was a presentation and then there was a non-presentation and now there was a video. So these are the new way of actually presenting and teaching now since the COVID happened. And I think since we don't have, or if we don't have any comment or any question on all the presentation, maybe that will be a good transition to go to the next session that actually is an exchange session about teaching practices. So I will advise you to stay for the next session by going back to the main room, and if you can give your idea on how you teach in your country. I've seen following different presentation, different method. We've seen the philosophical side, the religious side, the medicine side, the pure educational side. So I think for the next session in 5 minutes, it will be very interesting to give your idea so that we can build some kind of a collaborative cooperation on that. So if you don't have any more questions, feel free to log into the main room by leaving this room and to take maybe a 5-minute breaks by the time the other session is ending, and then don't be hasty to join and to participate into the exchange session that will be in 5 minutes.
Perfect.
So thank you all. Thank you,
you.
Candice, for sharing the session. Then I will see you in 5 minutes.
Sure. And we have a one hour break, right?
No, I think we have the 5 minutes. Just right after right after the community exchange, we have a 1 hour break. That will be the lunch break, depending on whatever you are. Here in Paris, it's 11, so I don't know about you,
sure.
but okay. So see you in a bit.
Okay. Sure. you.
Thank you.